So, 2 Just Stop Oil protesters were arrested for disrupting the Gallagher Premiership rugby final at Twickenham yesterday. By now, I'm sure you've seen the pictures of the scene. There you go. 37-year-old Dr. Patrick Hart from Bristol and 40-year-old Sam Johnson from Essex ran onto the pitch midway through the first half of the match before throwing orange paint powder onto the field all over the place. Look at them there having a whale of a time. Play was suspended as the men were escorted from the stadium by stewards. I believe also a rugby player also got involved. There he is, taking him across the pitch, dragging him, kicking and screaming, perhaps you could say. So, joining me now is Zoe Cohen, a Just Stop Oil spokesperson. We've gone straight to the people who know what's going on. Thank you very much for joining me, Zoe. Do you think, with hindsight, it was perhaps a little bit of a mistake for Just Stop Oil to do this with this rugby match? They were very swiftly taken off and they ended up looking a bit silly, did they not?
Hi, Emily. Thanks for having me on. I don't think they look silly at all, to be honest. I think that it's obviously caused a lot of conversation, which is what sadly we have to do these things to ensure that the biggest threat to all of us globally and all of our children and grandchildren is talked about, because it just doesn't get talked about.
Do you think,
otherwise.
Zoe, sorry to interrupt you, but do you think that's the case? Because I take your point that if you make a spectacle, then people will start talking about it. But what I've seen in recent days is a lot of ordinary people fighting back in their own way. So we've seen, for example, a bridge was blocked by Just Stop Oil protesters and a scaffolder got out of his van and pushed them away because he needed to get to work. We've seen at the Chelsea Flower Show that a woman took it upon herself to spray the protesters with a hose pipe, with water, because she was so frustrated. We've seen with this rugby match that the Just Stop Oil protesters were very swiftly dragged off the pitch by the rugby player themselves and security. So do you think perhaps a lot of people are not getting the message and they actually find you a bit of a nuisance?
Thanks, Emily. I mean, I think it's really important to make sure that all of your listeners understand that what Just Stop Oil is asking for, demanding from the UK government, is an end to new fossil fuel project. We're not saying stop all fossil fuel use right now. We're saying stop building new taps. The house is on fire, our children are locked in the house, and this government is pouring more petrol on the flames, and that's genocidal and murderous. So it's important that everyone understands that.
Zoe, that's very extreme language. Do you genuinely believe that? Because I've been looking at statistics about this, because I want to know the facts, and I've been looking at climate-related deaths, and they've nosedived in the last years as we become more adaptive to different types of climate.
Seems to be a trope that you guys push a lot. I think that there are huge amounts of harm and death that is not counted in those numbers. So, for example, the people who are dying literally minute by minute across the 140 million people in the east of Africa who are experiencing the worst climate drought in 40 years plus. Literally people are dying every few seconds, every 30 odd seconds in East Africa. Those kind of deaths from malnutrition, starvation are not counted.
And you think that, sorry Zoe, but do you think that stopping new gas and oil licences in this country will help save those people from a climate-related death? Because I am very sceptical, because these oil and gas companies, if they can't work here, they're not going to stop drilling, they're just going to go elsewhere. For example, one Scottish business up in the North Sea, they're going to move their industry to Indonesia, for example. So we're talking about the entire planet, and you're focusing on the minutiae of British policy. Are you thinking big enough? Should you be going to China, India, Pakistan, etc., etc.?
Yeah, again, that's a common thing that you guys push out, isn't it? We're British citizens, so we have to focus on the British government. And as we know, there are courageous, ordinary people all over the world in lots of different countries who've had enough as well and are demanding similar or related demands of their own governments. I think only yesterday, 6,000 people blocked a motorway in the Netherlands demanding an end to fossil fuel subsidies, etc. And 1,500 of them were arrested in one day. So this is not only the UK. You know, people all over the world are taking action because they've had enough of the lies and deception of the oil companies and the governments. You know, we know this government received, or this Conservative Party received £3.5 million. £3.5 million from oil interests, from polluters, and from the climate denial platforms. They are funding this government. No wonder the government doesn't want to stop oil and gas.
Well,
you wouldn't be surprised,
you must
would
be
you?
on that point, Zoe. You must be delighted to see. I think it was on the front page of one of the main newspapers today that Keir Starmer has said yes to the policy that you are proposing. He says that there won't be any new oil and gas licences in the North Sea. So do you consider that a big win for Just Stop Oil?
Well, that isn't entirely new news, Emily. Labour Party talked about supporting the need to end new oil and gas projects some time ago, as have other main political parties and the Scottish Parliament. So, it's really just the Conservative Party that are out on a limb here. But it's not surprising because they get £3.5 million in 1 year alone from the polluters. So it's not really surprising that they don't want to, cut off the nose that's, or whatever the right expression is, the golden goose that feeds them. They don't want to end the golden goose, do they? So it's not surprising. But, at the end of the day, young people feel desperate, they're anxious, they feel totally left behind and ignored and betrayed by politicians.
But I feel like a lot of the doom-mongering,
across the world, Emily.
I think a lot of the doom-mongering can make them feel that way, and I don't always believe it's justified, because I think a lot of people would like us to transition to a greener ways of energy. Of course we do, but a lot of people would concede that we're going to need oil and gas for at least 20, 30 more years in order to transition to net zero. So we may as well be getting it from here. We may as well be getting it from here, close to home, where it is probably more eco-friendly than importing it from halfway across the world, which is what will happen. So that's the problem. Just trying to be realistic about it. And, of course, we need to put lots of energy into adaptation, course, across the world.
We do need energy into adaptation. I would absolutely agree with that. But we need to be realistic about physics. You can't negotiate with the melting point of ice. You guys sometimes talk as if this thing is negotiable. The melting point of ice isn't negotiable. The temperature at which people die isn't negotiable. The temperature at which crops fail isn't negotiable. It's not negotiable, this stuff.
This is where I disagree with you, because we are coming up as a species, we are coming up with new ways every day to keep and sustain our way of living. And I really do think you need to be more positive.
With greatest respect and love to you as a young person, in Pakistan, only a few days ago, they had 48.5 degrees. I'm sorry, but we would not survive very long in that heat. People don't survive in that heat, Emily.
I think more people die in cold weather, actually. But I take your point, and I'll let the viewers, of course, have been listening, and they'll have very different opinions on all of this. And I just think that you should have a more positive message, because there is a lot of fear-mongering, and I think that is actually affecting young people.
We have a very positive message. Come out and join us every Saturday, 12 p.m. Parliament Square. We're lovely people. You'll have a great time, and you'll have a sense of purpose in your life.
There we go. There's the pitch.
End new fossil fuels.
There's the pitch to the nation. Thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate your time this afternoon. Zoe Cohen, a Just Stop Oil spokesperson there. Whew, let me know what you think about that one. So